It's time for Recipe of the Day. I resisted the pumpkin pie spice craze because I'd always used individual spices in my pumpkin pie, and that kind of spice mix blend kind of thing. I would just reach for the cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, allspice, cloves, and add those individually. So why on earth would I need a container with all of them mixed together? That's just an extra container for my pantry. But this year I've been reaching for all those jars more often than before and decided it was time that I figure out the perfect ratio for my own pumpkin pie spice blend so that I can just use one jar instead of all those others. It's an extra jar in my pantry, but it's a handy one. So what I have for you today is the ratios for the various spices that are typically found in pumpkin pie spice so that you could make any sized batch you want. And it's kind of like the standard ratios. Like if you were just going to go buy pumpkin pie spice at the grocery store, this ratio version I'm telling you is going to taste the most like that. But I will say that my actual recipe for pumpkin pie spice is a little bit different. The reason is that the spices in the ratio that are standardly used are cinnamon, ginger, allspice, nutmeg, cloves, and mace. But I tend to not use the allspice or the mace simply because I don't usually buy them. I never buy mace. I never have it. Allspice, I've always found that I don't go through it very quickly compared to the other ones. And so it's not as fresh. And since it's kind of just like a combination of the other spices anyways, in terms of its flavor, it doesn't make sense for me to have it. If I have something that calls for allspice, I'll just, toss in a little cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, cloves, and we're good to go. So I don't tend to have allspice. I don't tend to have mace. So I'm going to give you the ratio that uses all of those spices, but then I'm going to give you my favorite recipe for pumpkin pie spice, which is omitting the allspice and the mace because I don't have those. So the ratio is 16 parts cinnamon, 8 parts ginger, 4 parts allspice, 2 parts nutmeg, 1 part cloves, and 1 part mace. Put that another way, you add in your cinnamon and then do half as much of that of ginger, and then half the amount of ginger that you put, that's how much allspice you put, and then half the amount of allspice you put, that's how much nutmeg you put, and then half the amount of nutmeg you put, that's how much cloves and mace you put. And I'll just tell you, like, in terms of like teaspoons, for instance, if you started with 4 teaspoons of cinnamon, then you would do 2 teaspoons of ginger, 1 teaspoon of allspice, a half teaspoon of nutmeg, and a 1/4 teaspoon each of cloves and of mace. So that is the basic ratio using all 6 spices. Now, for my particular blend that is missing the things I don't tend to have, it's 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of ginger, a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and 1/8 teaspoon of cloves. And that is basically it. I will just also say that I have, in a pinch, just used the cinnamon and ginger in recipes. Like I'm making a pumpkin bread or pumpkin muffins or like a quick apple crumble. I will just do the cinnamon and ginger and it is great. And then it's just whatever amount of cinnamon you're using and then half that amount of ginger. And if you have them, a little pinch of cloves, a little pinch of nutmeg, that's going to be great too. Okay, I will put a link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. And I will just let you know that everything there is arranged by date. So today's date is September 13th of 2024. And if you have listened to all the way through this episode, you are a diehard fan. And so I will tell you that today, September 13th, is also my birthday. Happy birthday to me. And it's very fitting because I love pumpkin pie. I know I tell you guys that I don't have a sweet tooth, and I really don't, but like pumpkin pie is one of the few exceptions. So even though I was a late convert to the concept of pumpkin pie spice as a thing on its own in a jar, I do love pumpkin pie, and I reach for my homemade pumpkin pie spice blend all the time now. I am Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all-new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great day. I know I will. Let's get cooking.